In this video, I want to take a look at a number that's vital to investors, profit, and I want to just warn you about the way that management sometimes try and pull the wool over your eyes as to what the true underlying profit figure actually is. So, good numbers, numbers that I like, numbers that I'm suspicious of. Right, let's take a basic profit statement. Now, the picture I'm trying to paint here, it's not an actual company, it's one I've made up, is relatively healthy. So we have sales at the top, 500 million, right, that's where you start a profit and loss account. Then we're taking off the direct cost of sales, that's costs that vary with sales, raw materials, staff wages that are variable and so on, to get to a gross profit line. And that's the first useful number. That's a statutory number, the auditors sign it off. That is basically, is the business making profit, factoring in just sales and direct costs of making sales. As Terry Smith of Fundsmith has said, if a firm makes a decent gross profit margin, then you have some comfort that it can weather bumpy roads ahead. Okay, it can afford to basically lose a little bit on the sales side and still be reasonably healthy. And the gross margin here, by the way, for those people who like working in margins, is 100 as a proportion of 500, so that's around 20%. That's fairly healthy. All right, so far so good. Nice gross profit margin going well. Now we take off the overheads, administration expenses, indirect costs that don't vary so much with sales, and get down to another useful number, the operating profit line. Statutory number required by law, signed off by the auditors. In sectors like food retail, absolutely vital, but in other sectors too. Okay, so here, operating profit of 50 million, as a proportion of sales of 500 million, 10%. All right, and that's a number I also like. It goes by a couple of names, by the way. It can also be called PBIT, profit before interest and tax, or EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. So a bit of jargon in there. Then you knock off your interest costs. That's a consequence of the way the business is financed. That's interest on debt, for example, to get down to profit before tax. And again, the picture's looking okay here. If you are someone who likes to look at interest cover, the extent to which the company can afford its interest bill, 50 over 10 is 5 times. That's reasonably healthy. Profit before tax of 40, knock off the tax bill, which is created by, as a function of the tax rules, if you like, and you're down to a profit for the year of 25. Not looking too bad at all, until you drop in last year's numbers, and then the picture changes. Looking at accounts analysis is all about comparing stuff, benchmarking it. Well, once you drop in last year's numbers, the picture changes, and there they are. All right. Suddenly, it's not looking quite so good. Yes, okay, sales have increased from 400 to 500. So the business has got bigger, but at what price? Unfortunately, gross profits and gross profit margins are in decline. All right. Same is true of operating profit and the operating profit margin, and the overall result for the year via, unfortunately, a decrease, substantial one in interest cover there, 75 million plays 25 million. Now the management team isn't presenting quite as rosy a picture. The business has grown for sure, but at quite a price in terms of overall profitability. And were you someone who liked to analyse those changes out on the right-hand side, not going to go through this line by line in detail here, you would find that yes, top line figure up 25%, great, management might want to highlight that to you and almost certainly would do, but working down, we've got quite sharp increase in direct costs, quite sharp increase in overhead costs, resulting in quite a big decline in both the total level of operating profit and the operating profit margin. So suddenly 10% not looking quite so good when you benchmark it against where we were 12 months earlier. That's 120 as a proportion of 400. All right, and the overall result, given that big increase in interest costs, 2/3 drop in the net result for the year. Now, if you're the management team, here's my point. You're going to say, well, actually, if I'm just forced to report gross profit and operating profit and so on, the picture's not looking fantastically rosy. So what I might be tempted to do, this is the red flag message from this video, is come up with a different profit number that I make up that paints the picture that I want to paint. Now, how can you do that as a management team? Well, here's the twist, if you like. The auditors and the statutory accounts require the company to report certain numbers, but in its prelims, in presentations to analysts, in press releases, to some extent they will report what they like, and often firms do. So watch out for numbers described as headline profits, special profits. I'm picking out some of the ones I've seen. Pre-exceptional, pre-stuff that's annoying and brings us down, makes us look bad. Trading, there's a clever one. You know, it almost sounds like it might be one that is required to be reported by law. I've seen food retailers use that one. They say, oh, our trading profit. Wait a minute, is that gross profit? No. Is that operating profit? No. So what is that? It's the number the directors want you to see, and it paints often the trend they want you to see in terms of profitability over a number of periods. And then underlying, there's another one. Emphasis on the lying, if you like. Okay, underlying being the director saying, actually, don't worry about, you know, the profit figure with all the inconvenient costs we don't like included. Look at this one instead. All right. So the message really from this video is short and sharp. All right. The statutory accounts contain some profit figures that I think, and I'm not alone, are useful and there for a reason. Gross profit, operating profit. Okay, the net result for the year. Be wary. I'm not saying you should ignore them, but we be very wary of figures that purport to tell a different story and frankly are not required by law and are not numbers that the auditors have signed off. Any questions or comments on what I've just said, as that was a fairly fast tour, do feel free to use the email address supplied.